Okay, let's talk about mom guilt. This is something that I truly do believe that every single mom experiences or has experienced at least to a degree in the past. If we are honest with ourselves, it's something that we are all facing at different capacities and in different areas of our motherhood journey. So today, let's talk about it. If we can focus on getting past it, or at least finding the tools to help us manage and navigate it well, we will all find so much more fulfillment and so much more enjoyment in our role as moms. So what even is mom guilt? I would say that mom guilt is that overwhelming and just like nagging feeling of self-doubt, unworthiness. It could be based on things that you are currently doing or things that you are not currently doing and feel like you should. It's just this inability to move past our perceived shortcomings as a mom, feeling like we're not doing enough, or that there is something that we're currently doing that may mess up our kids. And I think one of the weirdest things about mom guilt is that when it comes to guilt in general, usually guilt is something that you experience when you know that you are doing something wrong. But for a lot of us, mom guilt can rear its ugly head when we are truly not actually doing anything wrong at all. I can be having the best day ever with my kids, sitting at the kitchen table, coloring, we're having a great time, and then all of a sudden I will look out the window and see that it's sunny and think, oh my gosh, everybody's doing 1,000 hours outside. I should probably get them back outside so that we can do something out there instead of in here. And it's just this crazy feeling of never being able to measure up. When I first got the idea to make this video, I had been going through an intense week of mom guilt. I decided to go over to my Instagram and hear from a lot of you guys and where you are at as moms, and just hear about some of the most common areas that you guys are currently experiencing mom guilt. And this is not an all-inclusive list, but the number one reason that I got back that people are feeling some mom guilt is around their decision to either stay home with their kids or to work outside of the home. It seems as though for the moms who choose to stay home, they are still feeling this weight and this guilt of not actually providing financially for their family and wondering if it would be better for their kids to be out in daycare and getting that experience. But also for the working moms, a lot of them are feeling like they are missing out on these important milestones in their kids' lives. They wish that they could be with them every day. And so it really does seem like it's a catch-22 and like we can't win. Another huge one was decisions around screen time, especially for really young kids, and whether or not to have screen time be a part of your routines at all. Activities for kids, and feeling like if your kids are not doing a sensory bin every day that they're going to be behind developmentally. A lot of people feeling like they need to be filling their kids' calendars and lives with enriching experience, like trips to the library or enrollment in sports or play dates or things that they think will help to make their child more well-rounded. Other big ones were decisions around your philosophy when it comes to sleep and sleep training, formula versus breastfed, how much time we are spending on the ground playing with our kids, playing pretend, guilt around our children's diets or picky eating, guilt around our children's behavior or tantrums, or feeling like we're not being consistent enough with discipline or are maybe using the wrong discipline approach, our own lack of patience or anger or frustration and shortness with our kids, and of course the classic desperately needing a break and a moment alone and then feeling intense guilt for actually taking one. As you can see, the list goes on, and there were so many other examples that you guys were sending in of areas that you are struggling when it comes to guilt in your motherhood journey. And I just think that there has to be a better way forward for all of us. So where is this guilt actually coming from? Some of the guilt is actually placed on us or we take on from people in our circles, whether that is family members or friends or an unwarranted comment from the clerk that you had at the grocery store. Another really common place that I think that moms are taking on a lot of guilt is from social media and scrolling through their feeds and seeing things that other moms are doing that you're maybe not doing and feeling like you don't measure up. But at the end of the day, I think that most of the mom guilt that we experience is not guilt that others are placing on us, whether they are online or in our circles. It's actually guilt that we place on ourselves, and it comes from that little voice in the back of of our head that tells us that we're doing something wrong, we're not doing enough, and that we don't measure up. Before I get into some of the different ways to actually tackle this, I want to make a note on the distinction between guilt and conviction. Both guilt and conviction can be hard feelings to experience. It's when you are confronted with something and you don't necessarily feel great about the situation. But guilt, on one hand, is a feeling that leads you to a negative place. It leads you to those feelings of unworthiness, of self-doubt, and eventually of shame. Whereas when you feel conviction, it's still not necessarily a fun feeling. It may feel kind of negative in the moment, but conviction is actually guiding you to a better place. It has a better end result, and feelings of conviction in motherhood can actually help us to become better moms. With that being said, how do we tackle mom guilt? One of the things that I was really interested in when I started prepping for this video was how you guys currently tackle mom guilt. I was not surprised because I do the same thing a lot of the time, but surprised in the sense that it seems like a lot of us are using a band-aid approach to get past this thing. Essentially, when most of us are feeling guilty about something, it seems as though we just double down on the opposite of whatever we are feeling guilty about. Quick examples of this, for those of you who said that you feel guilty around spending quality time playing with your kids, a lot of you said that you will just set a timer and get down on the floor and play really intentionally with your kids until you feel better again. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do, but it doesn't get to the heart of the issue. Another example of this is that when a lot of you guys were feeling guilty about screen time, you would just say, okay, we're gonna go on a screen time detox, absolutely no screen time in this house for a minimum of a week. But again, while that may not necessarily be an inherently bad decision, it doesn't get to the root of the problem. You're not actually helping yourself and your kids to set healthy boundaries around screens, and instead you're just jumping away from them in fear till that feeling of guilt goes away and you oftentimes inevitably reintroduce them to the screens again anyway. None of these are sustainable approaches to tackling mom guilt. They are band-aid solutions. They will make us feel better about ourselves as moms for a short time, but again, they do not address the heart issue behind all of this, and mom guilt is going to show back up again. So how do we beat this thing? We've got to get to the root of it. The first thing that we need to do is identify the source of the expectations that we are putting on ourselves. If you were to think really critically about it, what are the most triggering things for you when it comes to mom guilt? And this is recognizing the source of the guilt that is placed on us, whether verbally by someone in our lives, but also guilt that we are just taking on subconsciously and it kind of internalizing. Maybe there is actually some pressure from your family members or friends. Maybe there are people in your lives that are offering you some unsolicited advice. And so what does it look like for you to actually place a boundary on that relationship and set a new expectation when it comes to the advice that you are willing to receive and maybe not so willing to receive? For most people nowadays, I really do think that a lot of the source of the expectation that we put on ourselves is coming from social media. I know that that's where I pick up a lot of the unrealistic expectations that I have for myself too. And so really practically, when we notice ourselves starting to take on some of those expectations, it's so important to put our phones down, to limit our screen time, to delete the apps from our phone for a while. I think the tricky thing when it comes to social media is that other people are not responsible for making sure that your feelings are accounted for when it comes to the content that they post. It's just not going to work that way. We need to be accountable for and responsible for ourselves. And if you are able to consume content from one person and it seems to be okay with you and where you're at right now, no problem. But if there is someone else's content that you are seeing and you find that you are frequently getting down on yourself and internalizing that you are not enough, you gotta be strong enough to say, I'm not gonna consume that anymore. I'm actually gonna unfollow this account. The reality that I have had to come to terms with as a person is that no one is going to do this for me. It's not any other person's responsibility online to make sure that I feel good all the time. I actually need to take responsibility and accountability to know what I can can and can't consume. So think about that critically. Talk to a friend about it, talk to your spouse about it, pray about it, but only you are going to be able to, when it comes to the source of your expectations, be able to identify and then set the healthy boundaries that you need as a person around those sources to minimize those triggers from being something that is an everyday part of your life as a mom. The next thing we gotta do is call out the irrational thoughts. I didn't feed them a healthy enough breakfast. Are they getting enough nutrients? Do we have enough planned in the calendar today? Are my kids going to grow up with any childhood memories? It just like becomes a tailspin. And so take account of those irrational thoughts. Write some of them down. Are literally any of them warranted? Guilt often has this spiral effect that can lead to low self-esteem and low self-worth. And so once we have taken a hold of those irrational thoughts, we need to start replacing them with truth or reality. And this process is going to look very different for everyone, but on a base level, when that thought comes up of I am not doing enough as a mom, start thinking about what you are doing for your kids, the amount of time that you have sacrificed, the amount of love that you pour into them, and start to focus more on that and the love that you have for them instead of what you feel you are not currently measuring up in. I am a follower of Jesus, and so this process for me always looks like swapping the lies that I will hear in my head and the irrational thoughts with the truth about what God says about me. I do ultimately believe that a lot of these irrational thoughts that we experience as moms are actually lies from the enemy. As a mom that is raising her kids to know and love Jesus, the enemy has a target on my back. And if you are raising your kids to know and love Jesus, you have a target on your back too. Your kids are the future of the church. They are the future leaders for the kingdom of God. And we have to recognize that the enemy will do whatever he can, everything in his power to try and make you feel like you are less than and like you are not doing a good job in raising those kids to know Jesus. As your kids' primary discipleship coach, don't be surprised when thoughts are planted in your mind that you are inadequate or that you don't measure up to the next mom or that you are not doing enough for your kids. He doesn't want you to feel like you're the right person for the job, but you need to remind yourself that God says that you are. And so this becomes a process of replacing those thoughts and those lies that we hear in our head with the truth about what God thinks of us and says about us in scripture. And so what are some of those truths? When you feel like what you have to offer your kids isn't enough, the truth is that you can remember that God meets you in strength where you are. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says that his grace is sufficient for you because his power is made perfect in your weakness. When you have those spiraling thoughts that you are doing the same things every single day and are not really seeing the fruit of it, feeling like it is so mundane, God rewards your consistency in the mundane. Galatians 6:9 says, do not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time you will reap a harvest if you do not give up. And when you feel like you are drowning in loneliness and are so isolated in motherhood, he reminds us that we are not alone. 1 Peter verses 5-7 says to give all of your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. I understand that not everyone that watches my channel is a follower of Jesus, and that's why I try and give advice that's going to fit for people that consider themselves one or don't consider themselves one. But let me get it straight. Whether or not you do believe you're a follower of Jesus, all of those truths still actually apply to you in motherhood today. There's still an invitation for you today to even just test God in motherhood and in relying on him and in asking him for his help when some of these thoughts pop into your mind. The next thing that we need to do is allow ourselves to be human. The truth is that none of us can do everything and be everything all the time. Every single person's situation that you maybe measure yours up against is different from yours in so many different ways. Everybody's financial situation is different. Everybody's situation when it comes to the support that they have with their kids and in motherhood is different. Everybody's relationship with their spouse or lack of relationship with a spouse because they are doing this on their own makes for a totally different circumstance and scenario. And so honestly, it is useless for us to be comparing our situation to other people and creating this expectation of ourselves of being this human being for our kids that does not exist. I know for myself, a lot of the time, the mom guilt that I place on myself actually comes from a place of pride in thinking that if maybe I try hard enough, if maybe I wake up early enough, if maybe I design the perfect schedule, that I will be able to do it all and be it all for my kids. But I can't. And surrendering to that reality is so freeing. It allows me to be more present. It allows me to actually focus in on what I am doing at any given time without all of these different thoughts bouncing around my head about what I should or shouldn't be doing in that moment. I want to do a quick exercise with you guys. I want you to picture a close friend in your life or a family member that is also a mom, and all of the good and all of the bad that goes into their motherhood journey. And then I want you to think about whether or not you would feel comfortable going up to that person and to their face judging them the same way that you judge yourself for the decisions that you make in motherhood. I just think about the amount of guilt that I shoveled onto myself when I decided I needed to start formula feeding my first baby at 10 months and didn't actually breastfeed her to 12 months or a year. And to be honest with you, I would never have that same judgment for any other person in that scenario. I would have so much grace, so much empathy. I would tell them that a fed baby is the best baby, is a happy baby, is a loved baby. But for myself, it wasn't that same grace that was extended. It wasn't that same understanding of my own situation. And I think we can be so quick to look at other people and recognize the good and see the gold in what they're doing. And then for ourselves, it's a totally different story. I think that we just need to be more understanding of the fact that we are humans. We are not robots. We're not meant to be doing all of these things perfectly all the time and removing our humanity from it. And if we can learn to just give ourselves a little bit of that kindness and empathy we give to others, I think we would be a lot more content as moms. The next one is a little bit spicy, and it's that we need to watch our motives. As I mentioned before, I think a lot of mom guilt can come from that place of pride, of feeling like we, if we work hard enough, or do enough, are capable of being the perfect mom. But if you were to think really critically about it, do all of the decisions that you make actually have your kids' best interests in mind, or do they have your feelings about yourself as a mom's best interests in mind? I think sometimes we're making parenting decisions based on what we think we should be doing and wanting to check off that list for ourselves versus actually looking at our kids and who we want them to be and making decisions to help them get there. To take it a level deeper, would you have done that thing with your kids if you couldn't post about it online or tell a bunch of people that your kid was doing that thing or you did that activity with them? Would you still have wanted to do that even if there was going to be no recognition for you as a mom for doing that thing? And I know that that sounds silly. I'm sure there are some people that are hearing that and are thinking, I don't care, like I still would do it. But in this world of social media and caring so much about what other people see of us and think of us, I think that there are some people that are struggling to make decisions with the right motive and with their kids' best interests in mind and not their own best interest in mind. Sometimes we are more motivated to be like the moms that we see online and do what they are doing than we actually are to look at our own families and figure out what is important to us, what we value as people, who we want our kids to be, and making decisions out of that place versus out of this place of feeling like we need to look like another person or get validation for what we're doing as moms, or even just check off all of our lists of shoulds. When you are freed up to parent based on your own values, your own motivations that are coming from a healthy place, it is so much more freeing, and it takes away that invisible measuring stick that we create for ourselves when we are trying to live up to a different expectation and actually mothering out of motives that are not necessarily healthy for us or our kids. Told you that one was gonna be spicy. Next, we need to ask for and accept help. For me, a lot of the time, this looks like simple prayer and accountability. That is the first step. If I feel like I am just drowning in thoughts of mom guilt, I will text my husband. I'll ask him to pray for me. I will text a friend, let them know that I'm having a hard day in motherhood. Sometimes even just knowing that someone else is thinking of you and that you're not alone in it is all that I need to actually change my perspective around. But simply knowing that people are praying praying for you or know that you are struggling is not necessarily enough. I think we also need to be okay to ask people to help us really practically in motherhood, and then be willing to accept that help without feeling like we are less than because we need it at all. Everyone knows that old phrase of it takes a village to raise a child, and I honestly think it is so devastating that in our culture today, at least in like Western civilization, we have come so far from that village model, that community model, and have just strayed away to this place of parenting and mothering in isolation and finding our circles in our community online. But it just is not the same thing. And so if you don't currently have community around you, ask your spouse or your partner, to ask family members that can come and support you. But I do also think that there is so much value in getting plugged in community, whether that is through a mom group that you find online, through a homeschool co-op, through your church community. It's just, there's nothing more valuable than having a community of people around you that love you and love your kids well. Of course, it is important to make sure that the people that you surround your kids with are healthy and safe people, but I think sometimes we can get so nervous about extending our circles beyond our core families that we're actually limiting our kids' ability to have those relationships. People that they'll look back and say were mentors to them, or people that became the closest of family friends. I don't think that we can discount how great that is for our kids' self-esteem and their confidence as they grow up, to have many people that come around them and actually love them as they grow. And so being okay to accept this help without guilt is not just a gift to you, it is also a gift to your kids. Next thing we got to do to tackle mom guilt is to take care of our needs. Motherhood is inherently a selfless role, and I actually think that that is one of the most beautiful things about it. However, taking the time to ensure that your needs are taken care of as well is not selfish. Taking care of yourself doesn't take away from your ability to care for your family. It actually increases your capacity. It actually helps you get to a healthy enough and well enough place as a person to continue to be selfless for your family. On a base level, are you getting enough good, healthy food in your diet? Are you hydrated? Are you getting at least some sleep or taking naps where you can? Are you taking your vitamins? Are you getting any alone time in your life right now? When is the last time that you saw a friend in real life? Again, it may sound silly, but I find that my mom guilt is at an all-time high when I actually have not taken a step back to get some perspective and to make sure that my own needs are taken care of. So this is always, I think, a very good and important place for us to start. And naturally, as you prioritize your well-being, you will find that your mental well-being, your ability to actually call out mom guilt for what it is and move past it, will get better over time. So model what self-respect and self-worth actually looks like to your kids by choosing to take care of yourself. Last but not least, we need to know where our identity is found at the end of the day. This identity of motherhood can be so all-consuming, and we place so much of our self-worth and value in being a good mom. But we need to be able to strip back motherhood from our identity and say, even if that wasn't a part of who I am, I would still be worth something as a human being. I would still have value to who I am as a human being. We need to confidently know who we are as people outside of mom, and know that our soul level satisfaction is not so tied to that and ingrained in that when our performance as moms goes down in our heads, that our self-worth and self-esteem goes down with it. This is why there is so much conversation around not losing yourself in motherhood and taking care of yourself in motherhood. I think it's okay to really love motherhood and have that be such a huge part of who you are, while also still having who you were before you were a mom be a part of that, and figuring out who you are now and into the future, and actually spending time with that new version of yourself and working on that new version of yourself. Something that I have full confidence in is that my worth as a person is not tied to my performance or how well I think I'm doing as a mom. It is tied to and based on the love that Jesus has for me and the life that I have in in Him. The truth is that there are days in motherhood where I feel like I'm an amazing mom and like I'm hitting things out of the park, and maybe based on my own personal expectations, I might be measuring up in that moment. But the next day will be different, and I might mess up at bedtime when my kids aren't going to sleep and I'm frustrated with them. But even in my best moments, I still need Jesus, because I still have gaps that I don't even see, and He loves me still. And not only does He love me, but He also offers to meet me where I am at in my weakness, to close those gaps, to help me be the best mom and wife that I can be, and fulfill my calling in those roles that He's given to me in my life. And so the truth is, you guys, when it comes to mom guilt, I can share all of these different tips and tricks that have helped me really practically from a psychological perspective to help navigate and cope with this, but I don't do motherhood outside of my relationship with Jesus. I am very reliant on Him. He is my lifeline every single day, and every single moment that those feelings of guilt pop up, that's where I turn to. And since becoming a mom, not only do I understand better the depth and the weightiness of the love that He has for me and for you, but I also am just so grateful for the access that I have to God when it comes to parenting and when it comes to those feelings of mom guilt and feeling like I don't measure up. So when those feelings pop up, I pray. I ask the Holy Spirit, is this guilt? Is this conviction? Is there something that I need to change in my own personal heart and motives? Or is this simply an unwarranted lie, an unrealistic expectation that I've put on myself in a way that the enemy is trying to distract me from the calling that You've given me as a mom to my kids? So that is what it looks like for me. But for every single mom watching this video, I just hope that you know that the fact that you put as much thought, as much worry, as much effort into wondering about whether or not you are a good mom and whether or not you're doing enough for your kids literally means that you are doing a great job. You care so deeply about your kids and the relationship that you have with them, who you are helping them to become. And to me, that is just so indicative of the love that you have for them. And so I just want to remind you that you are all that your children need. In fact, you were literally handpicked for the role of being their mom. There is no one that is more suited for this job than you. You are not your moments of weakness or perceived shortcomings. And for every moment of frustration or perceived failure in your life as a mom, there are so many more moments of patience and self-sacrifice and commitment to creating a beautiful childhood for your kids. So be gentle with yourself. Remind yourself that no one is doing motherhood perfectly, and in case no one has told you in a while, you are doing a great job with your kids. Well, that wraps up today's video. I know we went a little bit deeper today. It was a little bit of a harder topic to address and to talk about, but again, I think that these are such important conversations for us to be having as moms, and so I want to open it up here. I want you guys to share in the comments about maybe some of the areas that you've been experiencing a lot of guilt in motherhood, whether you have ways to tackle them or not. I mean, I would love to hear what those look like for you in the comments, but even if you just want solidarity and support and people to come alongside you in prayer, the comment section is a place for all of that. So know that I will be praying over everyone that comes through on this video. Again, I do feel like mom guilt is such a distraction from the important work that we are doing as moms. And so I hope that this can be one step in helping us get to a healthier place when it comes to how we navigate it. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I would love if you could give it a thumbs up, a comment, a subscribe to my channel, whatever you want to do. All of your engagement is so helpful, and feel free to share it with another mom that may benefit from it as well. But thank you guys again for being here, and until my next video, I love you, I am praying for you, and I will see you soon.